Kang Tiho had been living on the alien world of Ashara for 18 months. Every day felt strange. The sky was purple instead of blue. The trees glowed softly at night. The air smelled like flowers he could not name. But the strangest thing was not the planet. It was the people who lived here. The Velari were beautiful and terrifying. They stood taller than humans. Their skin was silver blue, smooth like polished stone. Their eyes glowed in soft colors, mostly violet or gold. They lived for thousands of years. To them, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. Tiho was a diplomat. His job was to talk, to smile, to make peace between Earth and Ashara. It was not easy work. The Velari thought humans were weak and foolish. They called them brief ones because human lives were so short. Tiho had heard that name many times. He had learned to ignore it. Tonight was different. Tonight, a messenger had come to his small apartment in the diplomatic quarter. The message was simple. The matriarch requests your presence at the Crystal Palace. Come alone. Tiho put on his best formal clothes. His hands were steady, but his heart was not. The matriarch was the ruler of all Velari. She had never asked to see him personally before. Something important was happening. The Crystal Palace was the most beautiful building Tiho had ever seen. It was made of a material that looked like ice but felt warm to the touch. Towers rose into the purple sky like frozen flames. Gardens surrounded the palace, filled with flowers that sang soft melodies when the wind touched them. Guards led Tiho through endless hallways. Finally, they stopped at a garden deep inside the palace. The guards left him there alone. The garden was quiet. 2 moons hung in the sky, casting silver light on everything. Tiho waited. He was good at waiting. Patience was the most important skill for a diplomat. Then she appeared. Lyra Vel Ashen walked out from behind a flowering tree. Tiho knew who she was. Everyone knew the matriarch's youngest daughter. She was famous for her beauty and her sharp tongue. She had never spoken to Tiho before. She had barely looked at him. Now she stood before him, her violet eyes fixed on his face. She wore a gown of silver silk that moved like water. Her long white hair floated around her shoulders as if gravity could not touch it. "Kang Tiho," she said. Her voice was cold and clear like winter rain. "Lady Lyra," Tiho bowed in the Velari style, one hand over his heart. She did not return the greeting. She simply stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke words that changed everything. "My family wants us to wed, human." Tiho's mind went blank. He was sure he had heard wrong. "I am sorry, could you repeat that?" "You heard me correctly." Lyra's expression did not change. "My mother, the matriarch, has decided that I will marry you, a human. The wedding will take place in 3 months. Tiho opened his mouth. No words came out. He closed it again. He felt like a fish that had been pulled from water. "Why?" he finally managed to ask. Lyra turned away from him. She looked up at the twin moons. "There is a faction in our empire that wants war with humanity. They believe your kind is a disease that must be destroyed before it spreads. Lord Verk leads them. He grows more powerful every day." "I know of Lord Verk," Tiho said carefully. "He has spoken against humans many times. He does more than speak now. He gathers soldiers. He makes promises to other noble houses. My mother needs a way to stop him without starting a civil war." Lyra paused. "A marriage between our species would bind us together. It would make war much harder to justify. Many houses would see it as a sign that peace is possible." Tiho understood the politics. It was clever, it might even work. But one thing confused him. "Why me? I am nobody important, just a low-level diplomat." For the first time, something like emotion flickered across Lyra's face. It might have been amusement. "That is exactly why. You have no power, no family connections that matter. You cannot use this marriage to control our empire. You are safe." "Safe?" Tiho repeated. He did not feel safe. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. You have 24 hours to decide, Lyra said. If you refuse, you will be sent back to Earth. No one will blame you. This is not your war. She began to walk away. Tiho called out to her. Wait, what do you want? Not your mother, you. Lyra stopped. She did not turn around. What I want has never mattered. Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the garden like smoke. Tiho stood alone for a long time. His mind was racing. He thought about Earth, about his family, about the life he had left behind. He thought about war and peace and all the people who might die if he made the wrong choice. He went back to his apartment and called his sister. Park Saman appeared on the screen, her face full of concern. It was early morning on Earth. She was still in her sleeping clothes. Tiho, what is wrong? You look terrible. He told her everything. When he finished, Saman was silent for almost a minute. You are joking, she finally said. I wish I was. An alien princess wants to marry you. Saman laughed, but there was no humor in it. Our grandmother would faint. Saman, what should I do? His sister's face grew serious. What does your heart tell you? Tiho thought about it. If I refuse, there might be war. Millions could die. Humans, Velari, everyone. I cannot have that on my conscience. But this is your life, Tiho, your whole life. I know, he rubbed his tired eyes, but some things are bigger than one person. Saman was quiet again. Then she smiled sadly. You always were the noble one in our family, too noble for your own good. That night, Tiho could not sleep. He walked back to the palace garden as the moons began to set. He did not expect to find anyone there. But Lyra was standing in the same spot where they had first talked. She looked surprised to see him. You came back, she said. I have a question. Tiho walked closer. You never answered me before. Do you want this marriage? Lyra's violet eyes met his. For a moment her mask of coldness cracked. He saw something underneath. Fear, loneliness, hope. I would prefer peace to war, she said softly. And you are not what I expected. What did you expect? A coward, a fool, someone who would run away. She tilted her head. But here you are. Tiho took a deep breath. Then my answer is yes, I will marry you. Something changed in Lyra's eyes. She nodded once. Then we begin tomorrow, human. Prepare yourself. My world will not make this easy for you. Tiho smiled. I did not expect it to be easy, but I have learned one thing in my life, Lady Lyra. Humans are very good at doing hard things. For the first time, Lyra almost smiled back. The news spread across two worlds like fire. On Earth, people argued in the streets. Some called Kang Tiho a hero who would bring peace to the galaxy. Others called him a traitor who had sold himself to aliens. His face appeared on every news screen. Reporters tried to contact his family day and night. His sister Saman had to change her communication codes 3 times. On Ashara, the reaction was worse. The Velari had lived for thousands of years believing they were the greatest beings in the universe. Now their princess would marry a human, a creature that lived less than 100 years, a creature with soft skin and weak bones and red blood. Lord Verk spoke to the Council of Houses. This is an insult to our ancestors, he declared. The matriarch has lost her mind. She would pollute our royal bloodline with human filth. Many agreed with him. Many more stayed silent, afraid to speak against the war faction. In the middle of this storm, Tiho moved into the Crystal Palace. His new rooms were beautiful but cold. The furniture was too tall for him. The bed was too hard. The food was too strange. But these were small problems compared to what came next. The Velari had 10,000 years of customs and traditions. Every action had meaning. Every word carried weight. A wrong gesture could insult an entire noble house. A wrong phrase could start a blood feud. Tiho made mistakes every single day. On his first morning, he bowed to a servant instead of ignoring her. This was a grave insult. By bowing, he had suggested that she was equal to a noble. The servant burst into tears, terrified that she would be punished. At his first formal dinner, Tiho picked up his cup with the wrong hand. The left hand was for war. The right hand was for peace. He had just silently declared that he wanted to fight everyone at the table. When he met the matriarch's advisors, he looked them directly in the eyes. Among Velari, only equals could meet eyes. By looking at them, he had claimed to be their equal. They were furious. Lyra was always there to correct him. She did it coldly, without patience or kindness. Wrong hand, wrong bow, wrong word. Do you know nothing human? Tiho did not argue. He did not complain. He simply nodded and tried again. At night, he stayed awake studying. He read books about Velari history. He practiced their language, learning not just the words but the musical tones that gave each word its true meaning. He memorized the names of every noble house, their symbols, their feuds, their alliances. The palace staff watched him with curious eyes. They had expected him to fail. They had expected him to cry or rage or give up. Instead, this strange human just kept trying. Weeks passed. Tiho still made mistakes, but fewer each day. He learned to walk the right way, speak the right way, eat the right way. He was not perfect, but he was improving. More importantly, he was kind. The Velari nobles ignored their servants. Servants were invisible tools that existed only to serve. But Tiho looked at them. He learned their names. He asked about their families. He said thank you. At first, the servants were confused. Then they were suspicious. Then, slowly, they began to trust him. An old cook named Vera started leaving extra food in his room. A young gardener named Tomo showed him the secret paths through the palace gardens. A cleaning woman named Hala told him which nobles were dangerous and which ones might become friends. Tiho collected allies without even trying. He did it simply by treating people like people. Lyra noticed. She did not say anything, but she noticed. Then came the night that changed everything. The Crystal Palace was hosting a grand celebration. All the noble houses had sent representatives. Lord Verk was there, watching Tiho with hatred in his golden eyes. The matriarch sat on her throne, her face revealing nothing. Tiho stood beside Lyra, trying not to make any mistakes. So far, the evening had gone well. He had bowed correctly, spoken correctly, eaten correctly. He was starting to feel almost confident. Then disaster struck. A young servant named Kessa was carrying a tray of crystal glasses. The tray was heavy. Her arms were tired. As she passed behind Tiho, she stumbled. The tray fell from her hands. The sound of shattering crystal filled the hall. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned to look. Kessa stood frozen, her face white with terror. The glasses she had broken were ancient and precious. They had been in the royal family for 2,000 years. The punishment for such a mistake was severe. She could be cast out from the palace, forbidden to work anywhere in the empire. Her family would share her shame. Lord Verk smiled. "What carelessness," he said loudly. "Perhaps the human has spread his clumsiness to our servants." Kessa began to shake. Tears ran down her silver-blue cheeks. Before anyone else could speak, Tiho stepped forward. He cleared his throat. "I must apologize," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "The fault is mine. I moved suddenly and startled her. Please forgive my clumsiness." The hall went silent. Everyone stared at him. Lord Verk's smile disappeared. "You claim responsibility. You would take a servant's punishment." "There is no punishment to take," Tiho replied. "It was an accident caused by me. If anyone must pay for the broken glasses, I will pay." The matriarch leaned forward on her throne. Her ancient eyes studied Tiho for a long moment. "The human speaks truth," she declared finally. "The matter is closed." The celebration continued, but something had shifted. The servants whispered to each other. The nobles looked at Tiho with new expressions. Some were confused, some were curious. A few were almost respectful. Later that night, Lyra found Tiho in the garden. Why did you do that? She demanded. You made yourself look foolish in front of everyone. Kessa was afraid, Tiho said simply. I was not. It seemed like an easy choice. Easy? Lyra shook her head. You let Lord Verk mock you. You let the entire court think you are clumsy, all for a servant. She is not just a servant, she is a person. She has a family who depends on her. Tiho met Lyra's eyes. Where I come from, we protect people who are weaker than us. We do not throw them away when they make mistakes. Lyra was quiet for a long time. The twin moons rose slowly above the garden. You confuse me, human, she finally said. My name is Tiho. What? You always call me human, but my name is Tiho. I would like it if you used it. Lyra stared at him. Then, for the first time since they had met, she smiled. It was small and quick, but it was real. Very well, Tiho. She said his name carefully, as if testing how it felt. You continue to surprise me. I am beginning to think that is what humans do best. Tiho smiled back. We have many surprises left, Lady Lyra. I hope you will give me the chance to show you. She did not answer, but she stayed in the garden with him until the moons were high in the sky. They did not talk much. They did not need to. Something had begun between them, something small and fragile. Something like understanding. The first assassin came on a quiet morning. Tiho was walking through the palace gardens, practicing Velari phrases under his breath. He did not hear the footsteps behind him. He did not see the blade until it was almost too late. Instinct saved him. He turned at the last moment. The knife that was meant for his heart cut his arm instead. Pain exploded through his body. He fell backward, hitting the ground hard. The assassin stood over him. He was Velari, dressed in black, his face hidden behind a mask. He raised his knife for the killing blow. Then the palace guards arrived. They had been watching Tiho without him knowing. They caught the assassin before he could strike again. Tiho spent 3 days in the healing chambers. The Velari healers were skilled. They closed his wound with light and strange medicines, but they looked at him with cold eyes. He was still just a human to them. Lyra visited him once. She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. You were careless, she said. I was walking in a garden, Tiho replied. I did not expect to be murdered. You should always expect it now. Lord Verk will not stop until you are dead. She left without another word. But the next day, 2 guards were assigned to follow Tiho everywhere he went. The second assassin came 2 weeks later. This time, Tiho was ready. He saw the shadow move in the corner of his room. He rolled off his bed just as an arrow flew through the space where his head had been. The guards burst in and captured the assassin. Like the first one, she refused to speak. She bit down on something hidden in her mouth and died within seconds. Tiho sat on his bed, his heart pounding. He was shaking, but not from fear. He was angry. He went to the training grounds the next morning. The palace guards trained there every day. They practiced with swords, spears, and their bare hands. They were faster and stronger than any human could ever be. When Tiho asked to join them, they laughed. You want to train with us, human? A guard named Torek looked at him with amusement. We would break you in half. Then break me, Tiho said. I would rather die learning to fight than die helpless in my bed. The guards looked at each other. Then they shrugged. If the human wanted to suffer, they would let him. The training was brutal. Tiho could not match the Velari in speed or strength. They knocked him down again and again. They hit him so hard he could not breathe. They laughed at his weakness. But Tiho kept getting up. Every time he fell, he stood again. Every time they knocked him down, he raised his training sword. His body was covered in bruises. His muscles screamed with pain. Blood ran from his nose and his split lips. Still, he did not quit. Why do you continue? Torek asked after the 3rd day. You cannot win. You will never be as strong as us. Tiho spat blood onto the ground. I do not need to be stronger than you. I only need to be strong enough to survive. The guards stopped laughing at him after that. They did not respect him yet, but they stopped treating him like a joke. Lyra began appearing at the training grounds. She sat in the shadows, watching. She never spoke to Tiho during these visits. She just watched him fall and rise, fall and rise. The third assassination attempt was different. It came not through violence but through poison. Tiho had dinner in his room that night. The food tasted normal. The tea smelled pleasant. He drank it without suspicion. An hour later he collapsed. The poison was clever. It was designed to look like a heart attack. The healers would have thought Tiho simply died from human weakness. No one would have known the truth. But someone did know. Lyra burst into his room. She carried a bottle of silver liquid. She forced it down his throat while he choked and gasped. The antidote burned like fire, but it saved his life. Tiho woke up the next morning in the healing chambers again. Lyra was sitting beside his bed. She looked exhausted. "How did you know?" he asked weakly. Lyra did not look at him. "I have been tasting your food, every meal for the past month." Tiho stared at her. "What?" "I did not trust the kitchen staff. Some of them have connections to Lord Verk. I thought if the food was poisoned, I would notice before you ate it." She finally turned to face him. "Last night, I tasted your tea. The poison affected me less because of my Velari body, but I knew immediately what it was." "You could have died," Tiho said. "So could you." Lyra's voice was sharp. "Every single day since you arrived here, someone has been trying to kill you, and you just keep going like you do not understand the danger." "I understand." Tiho reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her. Her skin was cool and smooth. "But I cannot spend my life hiding. If I do that, they win." Lyra looked down at their joined hands. She did not pull away. "You are the strangest creature I have ever met," she said quietly. "Thank you." It was not a compliment. "I know," Tiho smiled weakly, "but I am taking it as one." They sat in silence for a while. Tiho was too tired to speak. Lyra seemed lost in thought. Finally she stood up. "I must go. The matriarch wants to see me." "Lyra," Tiho held onto her hand for a moment longer. "Thank you for saving my life." She looked at him with an expression he could not read. Something was different in her violet eyes. Something warm. "Do not make me regret it, Tiho. Stay alive. That is an order." She left the room. Tiho lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling. He thought about everything that had happened since he came to Ashara. The proposal, the insults, the loneliness, the assassination attempts. It had been the hardest time of his life. But something good had come from it too. Lyra had saved him. She had risked her own life to protect his. That meant something. Maybe she did not love him yet. Maybe she never would, but she cared enough to keep him alive. For now, that was enough. Tiho closed his eyes and made a promise to himself. He would not die here. He would not let Lord Verk win. He would survive no matter what challenges came next. And somehow, someday, he would make Lyra smile without trying to hide it. That night he dreamed of a future where they stood together, not as strangers forced into marriage, but as partners who had chosen each other. It was a good dream. Lord Verk stood before the High Council with a smile on his face. "I invoke the ancient law," he declared. "No outsider may wed into the royal bloodline unless they prove their worth through the trial of Ashara." The council chamber fell silent. The matriarch's eyes narrowed dangerously. The trial of Ashara was old. It had been created thousands of years ago when the Velari still fought wars among themselves. Young nobles had to prove they were worthy of power. Many had died trying. No human had ever attempted it. No human could survive it. "The law is clear," Verk continued. "If the human refuses or fails, the marriage is forbidden. Our bloodline remains pure." Tiho stood in the back of the chamber listening. He understood what was happening. Verk had found a legal way to stop the wedding. If Tiho refused the trial, he would look like a coward. If he accepted, he would die. The matriarch turned to look at him. Her ancient face showed nothing. "What say you, human? Do you accept this challenge?" Every eye in the chamber focused on Tiho. He felt their judgment, their expectations, their certainty that he would run away. He stepped forward. "I accept." Gasps filled the chamber. Even Verk looked surprised. "You do not know what you are agreeing to," the matriarch said. "The trial has 3 challenges. Many Velari have died attempting them." "I understand." Tiho kept his voice steady. "But I will not let fear decide my future." Lyra stood frozen among the other nobles. Her face was pale. For a moment, Tiho thought he saw fear in her eyes, fear for him. He gave her a small nod. "I will be okay." She did not look convinced. The first challenge began the next morning, the frozen peaks. They took Tiho to the highest mountains on Ashara. The air was thin and cold. Ice covered everything like a white blanket. The Velari could survive these conditions easily. Their bodies were built for extreme temperatures. Tiho was not. "You must reach the marker at the top of the peak," the trial master explained. "You have until sunset." They left him alone at the base of the mountain. The wind cut through his clothes like knives. Within minutes, his fingers were numb. A Velari would have simply walked up the mountain. They felt the cold but were not harmed by it. Tiho could not do that. If he tried, he would freeze to death. So he did something different. Tiho found a cave and built a fire with materials he had hidden in his pack. He warmed himself, then moved to the next shelter point. He did not try to climb straight up. Instead, he zigzagged across the mountain, always staying near places where he could rest and warm his body. It was slow, it was hard, but humans had survived ice ages using these same techniques. Tiho's ancestors had lived through winters that killed other creatures. That stubborn survival instinct was in his blood. He reached the marker just as the sun touched the horizon. His skin was blue from cold. His body shook violently, but he was alive. The second challenge was the Labyrinth of Echoes. It was a maze beneath the Crystal Palace. The walls moved. The paths changed. Strange sounds bounced off every surface, confusing anyone who entered. The Velari navigated it using their perfect memory. They could remember every turn, every wall, every change. Tiho did not have perfect memory, but he had something else. He tore strips from his clothing and tied them to corners as he passed. He talked to himself constantly, using his voice to track echoes and find his direction. When the walls moved, he did not panic. He simply adapted and found new paths. The labyrinth was designed to break people who thought in rigid patterns. Tiho did not think rigidly. Humans were creative. They solved problems in unexpected ways. They failed, adjusted, and tried again. After 12 hours in the darkness, Tiho walked out of the labyrinth. The Velari waiting outside stared at him with disbelief. "Impossible," one whispered. "No outsider has ever solved the labyrinth." Tiho just smiled. He was too tired to speak. The final challenge was combat. Lord Verk himself stepped forward to fight. He wore ceremonial armor and carried a blade that hummed with energy. His golden eyes burned with hatred. "I have waited for this," he said. "Now everyone will see how weak humans truly are." They faced each other in the great arena. Thousands of Velari watched from the stands. Lyra sat beside her mother, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. Tiho held a simple sword. No armor, no special weapons, just steel and will. Verk attacked. The Velari lord was faster than anything Tiho had ever faced. His blade was a blur of light. Within seconds, Tiho was bleeding from cuts on his arms and legs. He could not block fast enough. He could not dodge quickly enough. Verk knocked him to the ground. Pain exploded through Tiho's body. "Stay down, human," Verk spat. "Accept your defeat." Tiho got up. Verk hit him again. Harder. Tiho's ribs cracked. He tasted blood in his mouth. He got up again. The crowd fell silent. This was not supposed to happen. Humans were fragile, humans broke, but this one kept standing. For 2 hours the fight continued. Verk beat Tiho down again and again. He broke bones. He opened wounds. He did everything possible to make the human stay on the ground. Tiho refused. Every time he fell, he remembered why he was fighting. He thought of Lyra. He thought of peace between their worlds. He thought of everyone who had told him he was weak, that he could not survive, that he did not belong here. He stood up. Finally, Verk stopped. He was breathing hard. His golden eyes were wide with something that looked almost like fear. "Why will you not die?" he demanded. "Why do you keep rising?" Tiho spat blood onto the arena floor. His body was broken. He could barely see through his swollen eyes, but he smiled. "Because she is watching." He pointed his sword at Verk. His arm trembled. He could barely hold the weapon. "And I promised myself I would make her smile." Silence filled the arena. Every Velari stared at the broken human who still stood, still fought, still refused to surrender. Then something amazing happened. Lord Verk lowered his blade. His face was twisted with confusion and anger and something else, something like respect. "I yield," he said. The words seemed to cost him everything. "The human passes." The arena erupted. Some cheered. Some shouted in anger, but it did not matter. Tiho had done the impossible. He looked up at Lyra. She was crying. He had never seen her cry before. Through his pain, through his exhaustion, through the blood filling his mouth, Tiho smiled at her. Then he collapsed. But he collapsed as a victor. Tiho woke up in the healing chambers again. This time was different. This time, Lyra was holding his hand. He blinked slowly, trying to focus. His body felt like it had been torn apart and put back together wrong. Everything hurt. "You are awake," Lyra said softly. Her violet eyes were red from crying. "How long was I sleeping?" Tiho's voice came out as a rough whisper. "5 days. The healers were not sure you would survive." Her grip on his hand tightened. "You almost died, Tiho, for me, for us. Was it worth it?" Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. It was a Velari gesture of deep affection, something they only did with people they truly loved. "Yes," she whispered. "You foolish, stubborn, wonderful human, yes." Tiho smiled. It hurt to smile, but he did not care. The wedding preparations began as soon as Tiho could stand. The matriarch had declared that it would be the grandest ceremony in 1,000 years. Every noble house was invited. Ships from Earth brought human guests. The entire galaxy would watch. Lord Verk did not attend. After his defeat in the arena, he had lost most of his supporters. The war faction had crumbled. No one wanted to fight for a cause that a single human had proven worthless. In the weeks before the wedding, Tiho and Lyra spent every day together. They walked in the palace gardens. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. They learned each other's hopes and fears and dreams. Tiho learned that Lyra had never wanted to be a princess. She had wanted to be a scientist, to study the stars and discover new worlds. But duty had trapped her in the palace. Lyra learned that Tiho had joined the diplomatic service because his father had died in the first war between humans and another alien species. He had promised himself he would prevent more deaths if he could. "We are both bound by duty," Lyra said one evening, "both trying to prevent war." "Maybe that is why this works," Tiho replied. "We understand each other." "Or maybe," Lyra said with a small smile, "I simply like the way you refuse to give up." The wedding day arrived on a night when both moons were full. The crystal palace glowed with lights. Music filled the air, a beautiful mix of Velari harmonies and human instruments. Tiho stood at the altar, wearing traditional Velari ceremonial robes. They had been adjusted for his human body, but they still felt strange. His wounds had healed, but faint scars remained as reminders of his trial. His sister Salmon stood behind him. She had traveled across space to be here. Her eyes were filled with tears. "I cannot believe my brother is marrying an alien princess," she whispered. "Mother would be so proud and so confused." Tiho laughed softly. "I am still confused too." Then the music changed, and everyone turned to look. Lyra walked toward him, and Tiho forgot how to breathe. She wore a gown of woven starlight. That was the only way to describe it. The fabric seemed to contain actual stars, tiny points of light that moved and sparkled with every step. Her white hair flowed behind her like a river of silk. Her violet eyes were fixed on Tiho with an expression he had never seen before. Love pure and open and real. She reached the altar and took his hand. Her skin was cool against his warmth. The matriarch stood before them. Her ancient voice rang across the hall. "We gather to witness a union that many thought impossible. A Velari princess and a human man. Two species, two worlds, two hearts joining as one." She turned to Tiho. "Kang Tiho of Earth, do you accept this bond, knowing it will tie your fate to a people not your own? Knowing that your life will be short compared to your wife? Knowing that you will face challenges that no human has ever faced?" Tiho did not hesitate. "I do." The matriarch turned to Lyra. "Lyra Vel Ashen of Ashara, do you accept this human as your husband? Do you bind yourself to one whose life will end while yours continues? Do you accept him with all his weaknesses and all his strengths?" Lyra's voice was clear and strong. "I accept him not despite what he is, but because of it. He taught me that strength is not measured in years lived, but in the will to rise when fallen." She squeezed Tiho's hand. "He is human, and I am honored to be his." The matriarch smiled. For the first time she looked almost warm. "Then by the light of our moons and the stars that connect our worlds, I declare you bound. From this day forward, you are one." Tiho kissed Lyra as the hall erupted in cheers. Human and Velari voices mixed together in celebration. Somewhere, Salmon was crying and laughing at the same time. The years that followed were not easy. Tiho and Lyra faced many challenges. Some Velari never accepted him. Some humans thought Lyra was too cold, too alien. They had to build bridges every single day. But they did it together. They had children, 3 beautiful beings who carried the best of both worlds. Their skin was pale blue, lighter than their mother's. Their eyes were brown like their father's. They grew up speaking 2 languages, walking between 2 cultures belonging to both. Tiho grew old while Lyra stayed young. It was the one thing they could not fix. Human lives were short. Velari lives were long. They both knew that Tiho would leave first. On his last night, Tiho lay in bed with Lyra beside him. He was 93 years old. His body was tired, but his mind was clear. "I have no regrets," he said softly, "not one." Lyra held him close. Her tears fell on his white hair. "I will miss you for 1,000 years." "Then miss me well," Tiho smiled. "Tell our grandchildren about the foolish human who fell in love with a princess. Tell them how he refused to stay down. Tell them that stubborn hope can move stars." "I will tell them every day." Tiho closed his eyes. "I love you, Lyra. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for being worth the chance." He passed away as the twin moons rose, peaceful, loved, complete. Lyra did not mourn the way Velari usually mourned. She did not wear black or refuse to speak for a year. Instead, she did something she had learned from humans. She celebrated. She gathered their children and grandchildren. She told stories about Tiho, funny stories and sad stories and amazing stories. She laughed through her tears. She shared food and music and memories. Because that, she had learned, was the human way. They did not hide from death. They honored life. In the centuries that followed, Lyra wrote a book about her husband. It was called The Brief and Brilliant Light, and it became the most famous love story in the galaxy. The final page contained just one line. They burn brief and bright, these humans, but oh, what light they leave behind. And in the end, that was all that mattered.